So episode 6 of Sir Ulric hosts Money Matters. We're still here. We're still growing. You may want to click subscribe, in case it catches on. Bitcoin is freedom. Some of you say, in order to be free, you have to know the truth. Bitcoin truth is seldom communicated more clearly and directly than from my guest today. Listening to his show, you will grow beyond a gains-oriented hodler. And in the most Darth Vader way, he finds your lack of self-custody disturbing. Phil, aka Coinicarus from the Pleb Underground, this side right here. I have the privilege of hosting you like you have hosted me in multiple times in the past. Welcome to Money Matters. How are you?
Dude, I am deeply humbled, man, to be here. I really appreciate it. This is really fun. I like that intro. Wow. I don't think I've ever had an intro like that. I appreciate that.
Well,
I really do.
I have, the first few people on this show, I'm bringing on the people who have impacted me from the meme factory, the Ivy League guys, Bitcoin Opportunity Fund guys. Walton's next week. Anders is in the future sometime. But like every one of you guys has impacted me so much. I have to make sure that when you're on this show, you get your due credit. And, watching your show, watching you bring a very based and very objective and very realistic narrative to the Bitcoin story. It's so important and so, of course, underappreciated. So I just want to let you know that I'm representing Pleb Underground. I am a part of the Pleb Underground circle. And I want to take this time to understand your story, because you bring so many important people in the Bitcoin world to stage, but no one's bringing you to stage. And so I want to talk to you about you primarily and your perspectives on where things are going. And so I want to start off with a story that you have told in the past. I think you primarily tell them in the spaces, but I kind of want to hear it here. You had a story about banking and how it impacted your livelihood. Could you share that story with me?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this story is, I would say, two-pronged, because there's multiple aspects to it. I have had the banking system, unfortunately, cause me problems on multiple occasions. And okay, we're gonna back up. So first things first. When I first got, I had just gotten out of tech school. Okay, so I studied network administration, and that's what my background was in. So I had just finished tech school, and I had gotten a job working for a telemarketing room in Montreal. Now, for the people who know Canada, or specifically Quebec, you know that Montreal has, or at least back in the late 90s, had a reputation for having a lot of telemarketing rooms. Anyways, these things are, somewhat sketchy to a certain extent, right? Because you're more or less shilling products that are not, people don't need, right? Like people just don't need them. And, being young and not having any money and not really thinking of I know it sounds corny, but the morality behind it, I was like, okay, I'm going to go do this work. Anyways, not that this fits into the banking portion, but I just want to give a little background on the way that I thought of things. So anyways, I went to go work for this company. And essentially what happened was that I became their IT guy for one of the rooms. Okay, because there were multiple telemarketing rooms, and I became the IT guy for one of the rooms. And after about, I think it was 5 months, unfortunately, all of a sudden, I get a notice, okay, not a phone call, right? But I get a letter from the bank telling me that I have multiple checks that have bounced. Okay, and these were from my employer. Now, keep in mind, the employer was providing me checks through a like one of these accredited companies, like Ceridian. I don't know if Ceridian actually exists in the U.S., but in Canada,
never heard of it.
So essentially, what it is, it's like a bankroll company, right? Like the company you work for issues your paychecks through them. So they're kind of offering, in a way, right? If the company that you work for doesn't pay them for a certain amount of time, like they'll still cover the checks to your employees. But if your company doesn't eventually pay them, those checks that you got paid will bounce. And that is what happened to me at the age of, I think I was 21 or 22. Anyways, I had tons of student debt, and all of a sudden my bank accounts are frozen. And keep in mind, I'm an employee of this company. I was the person penalized for something that my employer had done. Now, it turns out that my employer was going bankrupt and essentially had stopped paying this bankrolling company, Ceridian, for, I guess it was a few months. So all of a sudden now, I was responsible to return these funds to the bank. Like, so it's like I'm the victim, right? Like, I'm the victim of all of this, like, and yet my accounts are frozen. So all of a sudden, right? Like, imagine you're standing there, you're out with your friends, you're going to pay for something, and your card's getting declined, but you know that you have the funds. That was my first experience of my money not being mine. And I'm not gonna lie, it blew my fucking mind. I'm sorry, can I swear on this? No?
You're fine.
Oh, okay.
You're fine.
I'm fine. Thank God. Sorry, I don't swear that often, but like for things that like are intense to me, like
I want it to be real.
Swearing is an adjective, yeah. So it did. I was like, this isn't mine. I'm like, what is this? So obviously I complained to the bank, right? And to them, they didn't see a problem with this. But I'm the perpetrator here. I cashed checks that had no backing behind them. They bounced, even if it bounced months later. Anyways, it took what was it? At least, I don't know, 3-4 weeks to sort that out until I could get access to my account again. But it didn't matter because they essentially withdrew, right? They take their funds back. So my account was just sitting in the negative, and I couldn't do anything with it until I brought it back up, So anyways, that was my first experience with the banking system and me having to wake up. And at that age, I started reading books about money creation. That was the time when I began to say to myself, if this isn't mine, whose money is this? And that began the rabbit hole of money. And I didn't realize, so to back up, okay, I was very much into like conspiracy type of theories, stuff like, like Illuminati, all of the secret societies, me with like my 23s and the law of fives and all of this. Like I just,
how much I wanted you to be episode 5. It's not, I messed up.
It's all good. It's all good. But man, 6 is good. 6 is good too. It's just 5 plus 1.
Yeah.
It's just 5 plus 1.
No.
But yeah, it's like that's kind of what started me off, but I didn't realize the connection to money yet, right? Like all of these groups, these powerful groups, the Bilderbergs, all of this stuff, like it didn't even occur to me, right? Like the central bankers, and it just didn't occur to me that there was a connection between all of this and the money. So then I think the first book I ever read that was like about money, and this is going to be corny as fuck. It's like, I think it was called the Little Green Book of Money. Okay. It was like this tiny little book that kind of, looked like a joke. It genuinely looked like a joke. And it explains the different monies throughout history, right? It talks about the shells and everything like that. And we eventually get to fiat money that's created by the government. And again, it still hadn't clicked. I could see it, right? I'm like, okay, so the government creates this. Why is this a problem? I hadn't realized yet that they were creating it out of thin air. That only came, I would say that came much later when I was introduced to the Creature from Jekyll Island, which that I actually read before I was a Bitcoin. That was something, because essentially reading about the conspiracy theories, the central bankers, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all this stuff, right? Even the Titanic, you all of a sudden end up at Jekyll Island, and you're like, what is this? So at the time, right? Like, I had grown up in Canada. So for me, my framing was really Canadian. So I read this thing about the US banking system, and I'm like, wait a second, that's what they're doing in the States. Like, what are we doing here in Canada? And lo and behold, we do the exact same shit. You have the Central Bank of Canada. We do this weird circle jerking handshaking thing of we create a bond, you buy the bond, we create money out of thin air, everybody's happy, everyone gets rich up at the top, and screw everybody else essentially. And I was like, I was amazed, and I'm like, don't people know this? So I actually started talking to my father about this, right? And I'm like, do you realize how money is created? And I started to explain to him all of this stuff, and he, it was the same answer he gave to me when I was a kid, right? Because even when I was a kid, I was like, who creates money? And he was like, the government creates money. And that was it. That's where it ended. And then, so I had this conversation again years later, and he says the same thing to me again. And I go, but why is that okay? I go, why is that okay? I'm like, we have no control over this. I go, it's not even ours. I go, they get to create it. And I did not understand the Cantillon effect. I did not understand the whole piece about how the money has higher purchasing power when it is immediately issued versus several years later, not even several years later, because essentially the rate is going so much faster. It used to take years, right? And now it takes very little time for the money to lose its value at an exponential rate. So yeah, that's my long-winded banking story. That's like, yeah, that was the beginnings, but we didn't have Bitcoin yet, okay? We didn't have Bitcoin yet at that time in my life. And so for me, okay, I'll finish it up with this piece. I now at this point understood the mechanics, or at least I believed I had all the information I needed to understand the mechanics of how money worked. So I was like, okay, this is a game and it's rigged. So I need to understand the rules in order to use them to my advantage. So the next step was looking at some type of an investment, because I understood that I was going to be working in a grade, like into my grade. Like that's just what it is. Like, it's kind of funny. I used to say this to the guys at the office, like when you're standing in your cube, you're literally fucking working in your plot. It's like, it's horrible. Like I know it's dire. I don't mean to look at it that way. I'm not trying to insult that. That is the extremes that I go to, in my head to snap myself out of things. Yeah. So anyways, had to figure out how to play this game. Okay. So there's metals. I watched my father accumulate metals and become poor. Okay. That I'm just being honest, like that. Now, granted, he's not poor because of metals. He's poor because of, he became poor because of the way that he thinks. Okay. And the way that he viewed money and the way that he viewed investments. So to me, hard work and saving your cash, not going to fucking do it. You're not going to be able to do what it is that you want to do. So my next step was, all right, not metals. Let's look at equities. I had already been buying and selling stocks very unsuccessfully, losing money at it. And I was like, but this seems to be the only way to beat inflation. Okay. Right. And the rate of what a bank would pay you for a savings account.
That's right.
Right? Your interest rate. So in my eyes, it was equities, and that's it. So the next step was, okay, well, if I have to buy equities, what is the only, in my eyes, the safest way to do it? So the safest way to do it was I would go and find these stocks that would pay ever increasing dividends, and I would just simply accumulate those stocks, right? And what you do is you set up something called a DRIP, right? Which is a dividend reinvestment program. And what happens is that every time you get paid out every quarter, they give you more shares. Right? Yeah. So eventually, after approximately 10 to 15 years, which is proof of stake, right? This is the fucking proof of stake system. So after 15 years, you should, in theory, be able to build up a secondary, or depending on how many jobs you have or whatever, a tertiary stream of income, right? That helps you then. You're just getting paid out of that. And then you can go and actually do what it is you want to do. And this was my plan. And I had started on this plan. I was like, this is going to work. And then I found Bitcoin, and I threw my fucking plan out the window.
Wait, then you what?
Then I found Bitcoin.
Oh, then you found it. Ooh.
Then I found Bitcoin. Like now we fast forward to like the age of like 44. So yeah, I found Bitcoin at like, I think I was 36, 37. Anyways, Um, yeah. So then I had to throw that plan out.
Right on.
So
Right
yeah,
on.
this is like how the whole banking story, like this is how it evolved.
Great. Again, I was enthralled that whole time. You took 12 minutes to tell that story, but let me
I'm
tell you,
sorry.
you are one of the best storytellers in the whole space. And if you guys
Wow.
don't learn anything from this episode, do not apologize. Go subscribe to Pleb Underground. You will see the link in the show notes, and watch Phil's 10 to 15-minute stories about what's happening in Bitcoin. It will change your perspective. Phil, and when it comes down to the banking system, from a fundamental perspective, is it evil? Is it flawed? Is it good or efficient, or any combination of those? Explain your answer.
So when I okay, how about this? Initially, when that situation happened to me that I explained, I thought the banking system was evil. And I thought that the people working there were evil, and I was convinced of quote unquote good and evil. Okay.
Yep.
Then I realized something, that everybody is just simply following their incentives.
That's
And
right.
good and evil are not just a line in the sand. It's sorry, it's not a hard line. Okay,
Right.
it is a movement, kind of like there's like a variation, a very slippery slope. But in the end, it's this, right? Banking itself is not evil. I came to that conclusion. Okay. And I'm not saying this to endorse the banking establishment in
Nope.
any way, shape, or form. I'm just simply explaining that no, it's not evil. And the reason it's not evil is that the banks themselves are not responsible for the devaluation of the currency. Okay, it is the group that actually issues the currency. So for, I believe in the states, it's the Federal Reserve. So they are the ones that are issuing the money, the ones that are printing all of this money. It essentially, how could I say this a little bit easier? Fractional reserve banking is the problem. It is the rule set that has been imposed upon them. And I'm not saying that that is evil, okay? Because it's not about it being evil. What it is dishonest, okay? Like, that's, to me, that's what it is. And it encourages, as a result, dishonesty in our
Mhm.
culture. It truly does. And if we look around today, not to dive into all of the psychotic narratives that we all live through in our daily lives, but we can see how bad money has produced bad institutions which push
Mhm.
out very poor messaging. And as a result, we have a whole bunch of confused, angry people that can no longer communicate. They they can't communicate anymore. That's genuinely how I feel. And I feel like it's only going to get worse. So for me, it's not the banks. It is the fractional reserve nature, and in this case, at this point, there is no reserve anymore. Okay, and that to me is part, at least for the banks, that's the problem there. So they are encouraged constantly to take on an incredible amount of risk, knowing they're never going to have to really foot the bill. That's kind of scary. And
Kicking
then
the can down the road.
and then at the top, you've got the people printing money into infinity for every reason and handing it to all of the groups that they feel should benefit.
Crony capitalism, therefore the Cantillon effect. Yep.
Exactly. So it's this cycle that, like, none of these people are incentivized to change it. And what's interesting, right, is that you think there's no, but like, obviously there's bankers in Bitcoin, right? Like, they understand what's going on. And something I learned when I first got in the space, I do not remember who said this quote, and I apologize, but it is, those who censor the most require censorship-resistant money the most. And when you look around, okay, because look, they understand what they're doing with the money, right? Like the
Mhm.
government, the government understands what it is that they're doing with the money. These institutions, Federal Reserve, they know, like, they want Bitcoin because they know how and what they do with the money. So it's like, wait
Mhm.
a second, there's this thing that's way better that isn't susceptible to our bullshit. I don't think that they're, I don't think they're in it, is what I'm saying.
Right. Um, so we can go a couple of routes here. We could start talking about Bitcoin. But I kind of, because you mentioned the fractional reserve banking, because you mentioned the institutions that print money, and we talk about the ethics behind that. Let's answer this question. So if you could compare fiat encroachment, monetary printing, to a form of killing, first, second, or third degree murder. Third degree murder is manslaughter in some places. If you can compare fiat encroachment, monetary printing, to murder, would you say that it is first degree? For those who don't know, first degree is planning and full intent, like you're conspiring to corner someone and then execute them. Second degree is like almost in a fit of rage. And second degree is in a fit of rage, and then you go pick up your gun and kill them. Manslaughter, and maybe it's fudgy depending on where you live, but manslaughter is like you're driving and maybe you were speeding and then that may be second. But manslaughter is like you didn't intend to kill them, but with whatever you were doing, you ended someone's life. So it's like I'm not a murderer, you just killed someone. So Phil, would you say that fiat encroachment, monetary printing, fractional reserve banking, first degree, second degree, or third degree murder from an analogous perspective?
That is an interesting and difficult question. And the reason is that I think it's okay.
I guess
so
it's
the
a
act
question
itself,
of intent.
yeah. So this is it, right? The act itself of the money printing, the debasement, the theft of future value, the belief that you should not be allowed to store your value across time and space unless dictated by the benevolent money printers. Yes, I believe that act is like first degree murder. But if we're talking about analogies, but the people involved, right? I don't think it's cut and dry because they are following their incentives. So I think that in their case, the people, that would be more like a second or third degree. So yeah, I think it's kind of a two-parter, right? It's the actual production itself, right? That act, and then the people involved. So yeah, two-part.
Right on. No, I appreciate that, and that helps clarify things. Because the institution is the people involved are not necessarily fully to blame for everything that's going on. Everyone's not sitting there in a corner and saying, how are we going to mess those consumers up? It's just that they have inherited a system that was built, and maybe the system was built to be altruistic or benevolent or to help the world progress, but they didn't see everything. And that happens with central planners. Central planners basically work out major things beyond their pecking grade, beyond their pay grade, and they say this is how we should move the world about, but they miss things, they miss details that can be critical details. And I think with what we have here with our Keynesian economics, they miss some details, whether for intent or not, and we are reaping those detriments now at an exponentially growing rate. I want to ask you about, and again, Pleb Underground, what's unique about your show is that you don't really dive into the hopium like at all. Like sometimes, especially with the ETFs going, you guys have a little bit of hopium here or there, but generally speaking, you stick to the principles of what is Bitcoin, how it's going to fix the problem that we have with this fractional banking system. And so you also talk about the right way or the safest way to custody, to own your Bitcoin. You talk about self-custody, you talk about no KYC. What is Bitcoin without self-custody?
Bitcoin without self-custody is pretty much, it's not good. I mean, for me, like, so this goes back to my whole banking story, right? Like, that's what dawned on me, that I wanted to have something that I could truly own. And then in the end, I found myself just having a bunch of IOUs, right? Stock certificates. You don't even get stock certificates anymore. The digital IOUs. It's just IOUs
Yeah.
of IOUs. Because believe it or not, when you're buying equities online, like let's say from E-Trade, E-Trade's just giving you an IOU to the shares that they supposedly purchased. And this is all bullshit. So it's a long-winded way of saying, like, to me, like, Bitcoin without self-custody, I feel like it's a lost cause. Like, if for me, the okay, so the most important aspects to me about Bitcoin, like, I know that there's several qualities, but for me, what drew me in, number one, was self-custody. Number two was the hard cap, the 21 million hard cap. And number three was the censorship resistance. Like, and then knowing that the government did not issue this, right? Knowing that they cannot, forget about that they didn't issue this, because of course there's always the discussions about the NSA and the CIA, and
Right.
it's all owned by, everybody's the same, and oh my God, the government owns it.
And
Okay,
they're
fine.
10 miles from MicroStrategy.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, if we just kind of leave all of that aside, right? The
Right.
reality is, at the end of the day, the government cannot produce more Bitcoin. And for me,
That's right.
these things are incredibly important. I don't give a shit about the rest. I don't give a fuck about features. I know that sounds terrible, and it's like, oh no, he just wants it to be a pet rock.
The
You have
fundamentals,
no
though.
idea how much strength there is in simplicity. And
That's
I think
right.
that people overlook that, and they just get caught up in these Rube Goldberg machines. Like, it's nonsense. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, I think
mean,
we're
when you
kind of
talk about-
doomed Bitcoin without something.
We talk about what do we talk about? Use cases and functionality.
Mhm.
Money is to be held and sent, and you want to make sure that when you hold it, it holds its value. You want to make sure when it's sent, it can be sent successfully. Hello, Solana. And then when you send it to them, they get to have the same attributes and the same rights that you have when you could hold it. So the idea that Bitcoin needs to be fancy, smart contracts and everything, I think that's what made Bitcoin great, is that they focused on the security first. They focused on the fundamentals first. What does it take to make it good money, regardless of all the programmability? Satoshi knew the programmability would come later, so he wanted to make sure he got the foundations right. Here's a question. What is Bitcoin without no KYC?
The KYC question. Yeah. What is Bitcoin with no KYC?
What is Bitcoin without the ability to get it in a no KYC fashion? What means
So you cannot get no KYC Bitcoin. You
That's
must. Right. Okay, yeah.
Have KYC.
Okay, so
I'm gonna ask you the hard stuff.
Yeah, it's good though. It is good because a lot of times when people talk through these things, like, they just have like these predetermined canned responses that they've learned, and it's like, this is what I say. But
Yeah.
really, like, if you think about it, okay, so look, there's two sides to this argument. I mean, I'm sure there's other sides to this argument, but I'm just going to break it into two sides. There's the people that believe that we've been KYC'd out of our asses from the day we were born, and that I cannot disagree with, okay? Then there's the people who believe that even though that may be the case, that we've been KYC'd like that, you can still have this non-KYC Bitcoin, which indeed you can. And I understand that in certain parts of the world, it's really useful and it works. But in the Western world, if you have any sizable amount of Bitcoin that you are then going to exchange to use in the fiat world, because like, we could put the tinfoil hats on and the imaginary unicorn stuff, but at the end of the day, like, the banking system, right? Like, they own the financial rails. Like, that is what it is. They are the gatekeepers. Whenever like, unless you're just doing peer-to-peer, right? Unless you're just doing peer-to-peer, you're going to be hitting one of those gatekeepers. Okay, and those gatekeepers did require KYC, and now all of a sudden you have income that you have to prove. Okay, like you have income that you now have to pay income tax on. Okay, and the only thing you can do is use the loopholes provided to you in the system in order to get out of paying these capital gains taxes as much as possible. Okay, that is the truth of it. So I guess to answer the long-winded way of saying, of answering your question is that I think that what's really important is that we build out the parallel economy, because otherwise we will always be trapped with KYC Bitcoin. And the other thing is this: I don't believe that KYC Bitcoin versus non-KYC Bitcoin or any of that has a different valuation. I know that people put this incredible amount of importance on virgin sats and this and that, and it's like, look, I get it. I appreciate the overindulgence and the importance that you're putting on your stack. Things that are important to me are important to me too, but the reality is that when you're using Bitcoin out there, nobody gives a shit about your version sats. Nobody cares. They, like trust me, when you're buying art from Fractal, like, he doesn't care. Right. Did you pay him? Yeah, all right, good stuff. He got your Bitcoin. That's it. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying, like, this is business. Like, so there's a lot of like this weird type of like, I'm just trying to say that people shouldn't take ourselves too seriously, about all of this. Like, I know that money is obviously a serious topic, and this is about storing our value into the future, but you also sometimes have to realize the landscape that you're in. So right now, we have gatekeepers. Right now, KYC is the law of the land, and it's being shoved down our throats. We are not going to dismantle it from the outside, okay? We are not going to sit there and picket and, protest and make them stop KYC. No, we're not. The only shot we have is the parallel economy. More and more people accepting Bitcoin for payment. That's all there is to it. That really is all there is to it. And then all of a sudden, they are going to have to bend the knee and form a system around Bitcoin, and they are,
that's right.
And then they're playing catch up. We're not playing in their garden anymore. They're playing in ours, but we're not there.
Right. That's right. And we're not there yet, and we're growing and we're building towards that. And slowly but surely. That's right. That's right. It's not going to happen overnight like these cryptos. And it's like, I want to talk about those soon. But it's funny that you mentioned about the picketing and the protesting. The sad thing about the red pill or the non-Bitcoin libertarian people is that they understand that there's a problem, but they're barking up the wrong tree for the solution. Like they think that they have the right to defend the right to use cash, to use paper money, to use untraceable money. And I'm like, you short-sighted person, you don't realize that cash does not belong to you. It belongs to the name of the people of which it's printed on. It belongs to the federal government. And when that cash is called for by its owners, it's not coming back to you. And so it's really funny how people are, and just like your path, just like my path, I'll be honest, I think my dad just told me buy Bitcoin and I just listened. So my path was very pure. I listened to my pops. Yeah. It was but most people's path, they go through these rabbit holes pre-Bitcoin, and they start off with equities and gold and silver and cash and avoiding banks. People that I work with, I know some people, hey, I carry $500 with me, because I want to use cash. I'm like, that's a nice virtue signal, but it's almost pointless in the end, because they're going to let you use it until they don't. And then the CBDs come, and then we have other battles to fight. What are your thoughts on, and we didn't talk about this, but what are your thoughts on CBDCs, if you could summarize it?
Oh, yeah. It's inevitable, right? Number one, they are inevitable. All the governments that matter are looking into them. So you've got the EU, you've got the US, and to me, like, that's pretty much all that matters. I know Canada is definitely thinking about it.
China already has one.
Yeah, China already has one with their social credit score. So look, it is definitely inevitable. what I do want to remind people is that they're not using your shitcoin to make the CBDC. That's right, they're making their own. So the XRP people down forever. Um, so I'm sorry, because they constantly think like
Yes.
I'm fighting the state with XRP, and then it's like they're gonna
It's going to be the
use
new
XRP
rails.
to make the CBDC. It's like no. Do you understand the self own that just occurred? Like you're not fighting the state by providing a CBD. Anyways, so yeah. So I mean, look, they are inevitable. As the money continues to deteriorate, CBDCs are the only chance they have. Keep in mind, okay? So look, Weimar Germany, right? If anybody read the book When Money Dies, okay, you understand they didn't have the technology back then that we have today. So back then, right, like the money, but like you went into work in the morning, by the evening you couldn't afford tomorrow morning's breakfast, okay? They didn't have a digital currency. But today, okay, when these types of situations occur, they're going to be able to do, and I don't even know what they're going to be able to do, but they're going to be able to do all kinds of weird tricks to essentially hide that the money is constantly devaluing. And I think that part of those tricks, I don't know how it fits into the picture yet, but the whole thing about like you're eventually, again, if you believe in this, you're eventually going to be like not allowed to, buy more than a certain amount of beef every week. You're not going to be able to buy a certain amount of ingredients of something every week or whatever it is. And if you do, you get penalized for it. So you won't even be able to realize. So the money's going to have an expiration and you're going to be penalized for too much stuff. So all of this type of stuff, all it is a game. It's going to be a game to hide the fact that you're just becoming poorer. Okay. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm judging when I say that. I'm talking about the ability to store our value into the future. Like this is like, to me, like increasingly that becomes the definition of poverty. Okay. So the longer you can store your value into the future with certainty or with a degree of certainty, the wealthier you are. And the less you are able to store your value into the future with any degree of certainty, the poorer you are. And yeah, so I think that that's what we're doing with the CBDCs.
And I think that's what fiat is in general. I think the way it's considered successful is they talk about the velocity of money. How fast is money moving through the economy? It's not about how productive society is or how much savings individuals have. It's how much are people spending? Because if they're not spending, we're dying. And it's like you have to keep it's like a shark. You have to keep swimming, or if you stop moving, you're dead. It's really a sad state of being. Like you can't ever rest. What kind of slave state is that? So these are it's funny. You mentioned XRP and these crypto. No, this is great. These crypto narratives. Don't apologize. This is what we're here for.
I'm Canadian. It's automagic. Like I have no choice. You say something. It's like, oh, okay, well, I need to apologize here.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You guys are so nice. That's right. I told Anders stop apologizing, and then I started apologizing to him. He brought it back to me. So it's like the whole circle. So the XRP thing, these narratives surrounding these cryptos, it's funny because now I've been a Bitcoiner, and I mean I've been an altcoiner. I bought Tron in 2017, and so it's been now 7 years and 5 years Bitcoin only, and I'm looking at these crypto narratives now, watching for now almost 2 whole cycles. And some of them have been around forever. Tron has been around. There were others that were around before then, whether it's Ethereum, XRP. You would think that some of these technologies would have something that comes to market beyond speculation and trading on their little websites. Where are they? And I've heard you use the term vaporware, and you'll probably get into that. But where's the evidence of the productivity of these literally multi-billion-dollar projects? I mean, Solana is worth more than a lot of legitimate companies out there. But what is it making besides some augmented reality NFTs. Talk to me about that. What's going on? You do more crypto research from a Bitcoin perspective than anyone I know. But so I got to hear straight from Phil's mouth.
Oh gosh. Okay, so here, well, I guess we're
What's your
gonna
thought?
go. Yeah, you're gonna get a bit of a history lesson.
Yes, sir.
So it's okay. So when I first got into this, right, back in, I was buying Bitcoin for medium of exchange, back in, I feel like it's like 2016, something like that. I did not understand anything at all, and one of my best friends introduced me to Bitrex, which was at that time, I think, one of the bigger shitcoin exchanges. They had over 1,200 shitcoins on the exchange. And it blew my mind that something else besides Bitcoin existed, right? Because I was just using this thing for medium of exchange. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of these things. Like, what is this? So I started cataloging them all. I read, I mean, I can honestly say that I read through hundreds of white papers and I was fascinated. So my background is in network administration, okay? And one of the narratives that I say about shitcoiners and what they use, one of them is called the technology trap, okay? And what I mean by the technology trap is that when you have a background and you're technical, okay? Somebody presents to you a white paper, you look at it and you are evaluating it on the merits of what that technology can promise, okay? Essentially, what is its potential? So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, this is some cool tech. This could be useful. And this is what happens because when you're already versed in the space, right? In the space of technology, right? I had already been working for a Fortune 500 company, which is a technology company that was dealing in access control, flow control systems, security systems, all kinds of stuff like this. Okay, so it's like my background is already in tech, and you see this type of stuff, so you're already realizing, right? Like the little monkey brain is going, hey, if one of these produces something big, it could be huge. Okay, but you're getting fooled. You're getting fooled by the tech because what is Bitcoin? Okay, so Bitcoin is it's a distributed ledger, okay, that's censorship resistant, that's hard capped. So it is designed to store value efficiently and securely into the future. So why do I care about some token that lets me pay for a VPN service? Like, couldn't I just pay for that VPN service with the money I'm using now? Couldn't I just pay for it with Bitcoin? See, because again, and people sit there and say, well, wait a second, Bitcoin was allowed to do it. Why can't my coin do it? Okay, look, digital scarcity was created once. That's it. The fire, look, fire was created once. Okay, it wasn't just like some guy the next day who's like, boom, fire again. No, that's it. It was done. The innovation is done. Okay, like digital scarcity created once. Everything after it is an affinity scam. So when we look at these other technologies, you have to say to yourself, why does it need to be money? Right? Like, why does it need to be money? The other question is, why is everyone going to sell their Bitcoin for this token? Okay? Like, really, you got to ask yourself that question. Because the other piece of it is that what would make a person switch to something else? Take a look at what we have right now as our current financial system. Look at the way that money is made and everything like that. Bitcoin is a 10x innovation over our current system of money. So if you aren't coming to the table with a fucking 10x better Bitcoin, which no one is, I'm sorry, you don't have a leg to stand on. And nobody is coming to the table with a 10x better Bitcoin. You know why? Because digital scarcity can't be created. So you're not fucking coming to the table with that. Okay? Like, everybody is coming to the table selling you a dream. If they can give you this worthless token and you give them your Bitcoin, they win. Okay? The other piece of it is that, of course, like all of these shitcoin projects, they all have a foundation. They all have a foundation. They all have a management team. They all have all of these things. And for the most part, they have pre-mines. Okay? So again, it's a Chuck E. Cheese token. Like anybody anybody out there, right? Like I've said this 1,000 times, like anybody out there, are you able to use your Chuck E. Cheese tokens to go pay for gas? No, you can't. It's a walled garden. Why do you think your shitcoin's any different? Another thing that I used to imagine is this, okay? You're walking around with a wallet. You go to the dentist. You're going to use DentaCoin to pay the dentist. Then you're going to go to the grocery store and you're going to use Food Coin to pay for food, right? And then what are you going to do? You're going to swap over to Electrical Coin to pay your electricity bill. Like, it's stupid. It's totally fucking stupid. Okay? So really, it is financial activity. That's the other piece. Because people will say, well, no, DeFi, what are you talking about? That token needs to exist. No, it doesn't. It's financial activity for the sake of financial activity. Another piece that people don't understand about shitcoins is this. A lot of these shitcoin casinos, they put on competitions, trading competitions. Whoever produces the most volume gets some free shitcoin. Why do you think they want you to produce volume? To make it seem like something is happening. You know what? The best way to describe shitcoins for me that I've learned is they are a Potemkin village. That's what they are. Shitcoins are a Potemkin village. And for the people who don't know what a Potemkin village is, it is essentially, it's a masquerade of a village, right? Like, just imagine just the front facing of a house with nothing behind it, right? Like a Hollywood
Universal
set.
Studios.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all
Okay.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's my long-winded answer to that. Sorry, but shitcoins really piss me off because they're awful.
I knew that I was going to get Pleb Underground on Sir Ulric host Money Matters today. So I am thrilled. You take as long as you want to explain that. I'm like, Phil is ripping into XRP and Ethereum on my show. This is why I've been waiting for. A couple of things. It's funny, like I was at work the other day and one of my coworkers was, knows I'm the Bitcoin guy. He's like, oh, it's so funny, I'm like looking at these, looking into cryptocurrencies and stuff, and like no one's even talking about Bitcoin. And I'm like, of course they're not talking about Bitcoin. They're not paid to do that. Platforms, exchanges, they all have marketing teams, and they're all paid by this economy of, hey, sell my thing and I promise to chip you off 10% for the volume that I have, or you have to pay $300,000 to get your coin listed here. No one's doing that for Bitcoin. They put Bitcoin on their platforms because it brings all the boys to the yard. Shout out Khalees. No one is looking to say, oh, I really need to promote Bitcoin because it's the way of the future. No, they're promoting all of these scam coins, all of these projects, because that's what gets them paid in the short term. It's high time preference, and at the very end, like Phil said, it leads you to destruction because there's nothing there. Here's a question that I want to ask you. Bitcoin is not, and again, you bring on your show, Pleb Underground, you bring on some of the most innovative, articulate, important minds in developing Bitcoin and building Bitcoin. And I appreciate you bringing those people to platform where, a lot of other people want to talk about the ETF, and a lot of other people want to talk about, $1 million by the end of the year. And I've heard that. I thought I'd only hear that from one person. Now I'm hearing it from two or three. I'm like, what is going on? Why are we getting, like, haven't we lived through this before? Like, where's the humility? But Bitcoin is not just money. It's programmable money. What are some of the upgrades that you are excited about, that you're hearing about? And what are some of the proposals that you're not too happy about?
Okay, so and again, right, my opinion on this, I don't write code. I can do some very low level coding. For the people who know for the people who know me from the beginning of me being in this space, like, I was what is it? I got like third place in the Boltathon like 4 years ago or something like that. Me and Lightning in a Box did a like a Bitcoin project and stuff like that. I'm just trying to explain like my experience.
Were you
with
writing in
C++?
C++? What were you writing in?
It was what was it? Was it C++? I don't even. I think it was. I was using. What was I using? I was using the Arduino interface with
I'm
Whatever.
sorry to distract. It's okay.
No, it's okay. It's just like, again, it's very low level stuff because I'm not a coder, you know. So, but I do like to tinker, and I am good at taking other people's stuff and like modifying it and making it slightly work for my needs. The whole reason I'm explaining this to say is that my opinion of the tech is derivative, right? Like it is somewhat derivative. It comes from other people, right, that understand and are able to explain the tech a lot better than me. But I'll tell you this, in all fairness, I'm not actually excited for any of it. I know it sounds, stupid or whatever, but I'm just not. I'm not excited about it only because I've been here, for 6 years, 7 years. And like the last upgrade we all cheered for brought Taproot. Okay. So,
Oh
and I
my
wasn't even cheering
gosh.
for that. And I wasn't even cheering for that. Because again, I don't think that this stuff needs to be cheered for. I understand that these technologies need to be petitioned for, in the sense of, we need to have consensus and agreement around, different, different proposals, let's say like CTV, or what's it called? OpCat, which is the one that the guys like Udi are pushing. But look, the thing is this, right? Every single change we make, everything is a double-edged sword. Okay, it doesn't matter what proposal it is. I don't give a shit. Everything is a double-edged sword. So we are going to get the benefits of whatever it is that we choose, and we are also, whether we like it or not, going to get their equal disbenefits. So as of right now, I would say that on all the reading that I've done, CTV sounds interesting, right? It sounds interesting,
Covenants. Mhm.
but at the same time, like I'm also hearing, and I don't know if this is the same part of it, but I'm hearing Fedimints, and I don't know much about Fedimints, but I can say this. I'm just waiting and reading because I don't know what I don't know, and I'm not afraid to say I don't understand something entirely. So based on the feature sets that I've heard, things sound good, but we'll see, right? We'll see. Like, why are these changes being pushed? I always have a problem with time sensitive things. Okay. Anytime somebody is pushing you to make a decision that is time sensitive, or an organization, you should be concerned. Like, you should wonder why they need you to do this. This actually goes back to shitcoining. You'll notice that shitcoins, right? It's always Bitcoin's not fast enough. Oh, Bitcoin doesn't do this. Bitcoin doesn't do that. We need this now. Do you? Do you need this now? No, you don't. Because the thing is this, right? They want to try to convince you that this thing is going to be the next Bitcoin because it is implementing what Bitcoin cannot do. And what they do is they trade off all the important features and qualities of Bitcoin in order to try to sell you this new shiny piece of crap thing. So it all goes back to that. And I'm not saying that, CTV and OpCap and I don't remember what the BIPs are. I'm not saying that those things are going to lead necessarily to shitcoining, but what I can say is that we've already seen changes lead to things that we don't necessarily, not everybody necessarily agrees is worthwhile traffic on Bitcoin. Okay, we'll leave it.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that because I know that some people call it spam. I know that right
Mhm.
now it's the fix the filter stuff. I've been privy to a lot of these arguments, and this is one of those situations that it's funny if you're not like pro filters, then somehow you're against them. It's like I'm not pro filters. Why? Because I don't really know what that shit means. Like, what does that
Right.
really mean? Even the people, that's the other thing, right? You have all these people in the space that speak so confidently, right? About like what they know about these things. And
Mhm.
that's kind of a scam too. Because anybody who speaks with absolute certainty, I mean, I don't know, man, I'd be weary. Like I'd be
Yeah.
weary when they tell you about how amazing something is going to be, how there's nothing wrong with it, how there's nothing that could be bad from it. I don't buy that shit. I don't buy that shit at all. I'd rather somebody come at me with middle of the road, explain to me the positives and the negatives, and then we
Mhm.
can discuss the different types of scenarios that can come out from those. Because that is going to be much more realistic and lead to, I believe, less disappointment in the future.
I
But that doesn't
I
sell.
No, it doesn't.
It
And
doesn't sell.
I have people that I know and respect and have helped me out in my Bitcoin journey on both sides of the fence. A lot of people from Bitcoin Magazine, of course, are very, very pro ordinals and inscriptions. Sorry, which one's the actual inscriptions are? Which one's the actual?
The inscription's the one that's actually in like that's in the Bitcoin transaction, so to speak, right?
Okay,
Like,
okay.
yeah,
So the
the
inscription,
ordinal
yeah.
is the third-party piece of crap that sits outside that people pretend is Bitcoin, but is not.
Okay, yeah. So there are a lot of pro ordinals people in Bitcoin Magazine. I started writing there, and it's like I love them, but again, it's like, well, it looks like this is bloatware, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, some people say Bitcoin is just a database, so it doesn't matter what is put there. Some of our good friends mentioned that argument.
Mhm.
I will say that a lot of these protocols I've dug into very few, because again, when I'm writing about ethics, it's hard for me to look at what's going to happen in the next 2 years. But I remember that drive chains BIP 300 scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
The idea of having all these testing cryptos on the Bitcoin network, and you can lock your Bitcoin up, and it's like, oh, so much centralization there. It scared the hell out of me. I'm like, there's no way I'll ever touch that. Good luck to whoever wants to play around with that. And then Taproot. I made a Taproot address. I was like, oh, it's a new address. So it's like, or I'll make that. And I had a ledger at the moment, and I put some Bitcoin in my Taproot address. When Ledger went through its upgrades for its firmware, and I'm like, well, it's time to go. And I started migrating to my cold card. I didn't, of course, I kept the firmware at its lowest before they started saying we can hold your seed phrase, and the Taproot address did not work. It would not allow me to send Bitcoin off unless I upgraded my ledger to the current firmware. So that scared the hell out of me. And I actually had to upgrade the firmware and then send it off immediately. I'm like, I'm wiping my hands
Yeah.
of that sucker. It's like that's the Taproot address. That's supposed to be innovation, and it made things more difficult. Did anyone see that coming? That you have to make sure your firmware for literally a decent cold storage piece for at least a few years, and like now all of a sudden you're trapped. Bitcoin is scary. It's hope, but at the same time, we're building this thing and we're making mistakes as we go along, and we can only hope that we mitigate those mistakes over time. I have one more big question for you. In the next 50 years, is the dollar-based network, the dollar-based system, fractional reserve banking, is it a relic of the past like DVDs are to media consumption, in your opinion? What does that world look like pertaining to governments and economics primarily? A little bit of Marvel what if for you, nerd.
That's an interesting question. I've thought about this. Okay, so I mean, are you essentially asking if cash is going away?
I mean, not only cash, essentially, fiat. If fiat's gone,
Fiat, huh?
if fiat is like, or if it's so minuscule, if it's so minute in how we operate on a regular basis, what does that do to governments? What does that do to economics? And you can make it as long-winded or as short-winded as you want.
Buy Bitcoin. All right, no, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. So look, I mean, this is kind of like where it gets weird, right? Like I've thought about this. Okay, so we play out a scenario where somehow in the next 50 years the dollar dies. At that point, I'm 95 years old. So if I'm still alive, sweet, I guess. I don't know, maybe
50 years. It's that means
yeah,
0 to
I mean,
50,
maybe it
man.
happens in 10. Yeah, I know. Maybe it happens in 10 and I'm still like I am now. Who knows? But look, my point is this. In 50 years, right? Let's say the role of government is diminished because they no longer have the ability let me rephrase that. They're still printing money, but nobody really cares. Okay. It again, this I think would develop out of a situation where we'd have a parallel economy with the Bitcoin economy. But essentially, what it is that the governments would, I believe, would have to figure out ways in order to produce actual value in order to extract taxes from people. So it's like, because look, and that's the whole thing, right? Like that's where we get into some weirdness, because taxes are theft, so, and I understand that not everybody agrees with that. And of course, who's the roads and who's going to maintain the aqueducts? And like, oh my God, humans were like, honestly, we were all just dead until the government appeared. Okay. Like the government appeared and then humans magically flourished out of, the assholes of government.
Crazier, or even crazier, that that fractional reserve banking just all of a sudden materialized humanity, and we can actually live. Like we didn't have aqueducts in Rome. Again,
they couldn't build anything.
They were printing money, but they weren't doing it at the rate that we were. They were coin clipping, but they weren't doing it at the rate that we were, and they were still a functional body. So I'm sorry. Continue your answer.
Oh no, that's all good. I appreciate it. It's this goes back to the this book that I read, the myth of authority. I think that's what it's called, or it's called The Greatest Myth. I don't know. It might just be The Myth of Authority. Either way, but the point is that in this type of situation, okay, the reality is that governments would have no choice. This goes back to the original point. Governments would have no choice but to figure out a way to create value if they want to provide services for the wider population. That would unfortunately be their only way out. Because as of right now, governments provide mediocre services at a very elevated cost. Okay, yes. This is what we have now. And the reason they can do this is because they control the money printing. Okay,
monopoly.
It is. That is the reason they can do this. But if we are in a situation where the fiat power is diminished, right, and more people are accumulating and holding Bitcoin and interacting with Bitcoin and essentially just living in a Bitcoin ecosystem, well, now all of a sudden, you're not going to the table with the government. The government actually has to come to the table, to your table, right, and be like, how can I help you, sir? And then this kind of goes back to the book that I was mentioning about the myth of authority. We have this stupid idea that we think that because minimized government, because we don't have all the answers under a minimized government scenario, that somehow it won't work. This is a framing that's done on purpose. It's disingenuous framing, okay, in order to dismantle your argument against the government. That's all it is. Because think about it, right? We've never actually attempted properly that type of a system. So why are these people in this current system so absolutely certain that that system will fail? Well, for one thing, these people are going to lose power and control. So they need to convince you as much as possible, as best possible, that there is not a chance that you could that you could make it without their rules, right? And without their guidance, right? It's this whole fucking, benevolent, the intelligent architect, right? And the benevolent dictator, it's like, I know better and I'm going to tell you how to live. It's essentially the way that we live right now with the bankers, right? Central bankers, believe it or not, central bankers do believe they are the all-powerful intelligent architects of the world. Like, a central banker ruled world is one that's better than one that's ruled by governments. Don't think for a second that they aren't insane narcissists like this. That's the only way that you rise to that much power. You don't rise to that much power because you're just this wonderful person who wants great things for the world. I'm sorry. I don't believe that. They're following their incentives and they want power and control. It's that simple.
Well said, man. You know, I've known you for a couple of years now, and I've always wanted to say publicly thank you for the work that you do in educating people who will listen, because not too many people are willing to listen about Bitcoin. Your show is one of the few shows that I consume on a regular basis, and it has enabled me to grow in knowledge, has enabled me to think rationally and open-mindedly about things that I would not have before. And so to my audience, I would say if you're not subscribed to Pleb Underground, you're short selling yourself, and you probably have the wrong incentives. Even if you are a Bitcoiner, you got to know why you're here. And again, you come for the gains, but you stay for the revolution. And what this is, Pleb Underground is all about the revolution. So get some knowledge with with Phil and Walton, and Walton will be here next week to follow up on Phil's great signal. Phil, I have one more request from you. If you could sign yourself off with your beautiful radio voice, that would be great, and we can call it a show.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, by the way, for having me on here. It's an absolute pleasure. And you're going to have a crazy time next week. Don't forget to check out, Pleb Underground. We're on Twitter at Pleb Underground.
All right. Hey, thank you, Phil, aka Coinicarus, for coming on the show. This is episode 6. Episode 007 will have the British bomb himself, Walton, to continue with the signal. I am Sir Ulric, like my father before me. See you next week.